Hollywood has witnessed countless showdowns, but few encounters have been as explosive and historic as that moment. Harrison Ford, an icon of authenticity and uncompromising grit, stepped onto the stage of Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote his passion project. What began as a routine interview quickly escalated into a fiery clash, exposing a stark divide between a legend and an entertainment machine obsessed with superficial glamour. The studio held its breath as two worlds collided, creating an unforgettable, fateful night. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The stage lights blazed, and the roar of applause and cheers surged as Jimmy Kimmel stepped out. His familiar smile and energetic voice filled the space. Welcome to Jimmy Kimmel Live. Tonight we have a very special guest, a man who walks into a room, and nobody asks, "Who's that guy?" Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Harrison Ford. The audience erupted. Harrison Ford appeared, striding slowly. He didn't wave or smile, only casting a steely gaze over the crowd. Jimmy approached, extending his hand with enthusiasm. "Welcome to the show, Harrison. It's truly an honor," Jimmy began, hand still outstretched. "Honestly, I thought about wearing a Chewbacca mask to greet you, but then I figured I didn't want to get thrown out of the studio." He chuckled, but the laughter echoed into a chilly void. Ford stood still, offering no response. A slight eyebrow raise was his only reaction. Jimmy cleared his throat, slightly deflated, then pressed on. "But seriously, you're still as sharp as ever. People are really looking forward to Lonesome Hill, your new film. I hear it's a powerful story about farmers standing up to protect their land, a very timely topic." Ford remained silent. The air grew thick. The applause behind them faded, giving way to a haunting stillness. On stage, only two men remained, separated by a fragile line between civility and tension. Despite being unsettled by Harrison Ford's icy silence, Jimmy Kimmel was a seasoned host. He quickly regained his composure, his smile stretching reluctantly, and tried to steer the conversation back to familiar ground. "A very timely topic indeed," Jimmy continued, glancing at his cue cards. "And you know, Harrison, you've always had a knack for roles like that. From galaxy-spanning adventures to treasure-hunting quests, and now a man fighting for his land. It seems like you're always drawn to resilient characters, right? Like a hero who always finds his way, whether in a far-off galaxy or an ancient temple." Jimmy grinned, trying to invoke those iconic roles. Harrison Ford finally spoke, his voice low and gravelly, each word deliberate and precise. "I'm drawn to truthful stories," he said, his eyes locked on Jimmy, unwavering. "Stories about courage, about standing up for what's right. That's what this film delivers. Not spectacle, but the essence of humanity when pushed to its limits. That's resilience, Jimmy, not entertainment." Ford's response wasn't the light-hearted or humorous quip Jimmy had hoped for. It carried a philosophical weight, almost a declaration of values. Jimmy gave an awkward smile, feeling a bit deflated. "Oh, the essence of humanity. Deep stuff, very deep. Very Harrison Ford," he tried to flatter. "But speaking of limits, maybe we should talk about some limits you've pushed in real life, right? Like I hear you still fly your own planes. Do you see that as another kind of adventure? There must be some heart-stopping moments." Ford's brow furrowed slightly. His gaze like a laser cut through Jimmy's friendly facade. "If I need to fly, I fly," he replied, his tone firm. "It's transportation, not an adventure for amusement. And what you call heart-stopping moments, I call job risks, period." Jimmy laughed loudly, trying to turn Ford's blunt response into a joke. "Transportation sounds simple, like I'd say walking is transportation, but I bet it's way more complex. I hear you've had a few incidents in the air. You know, those real-life adventure stories of Harrison Ford are always a hit. Fans want to hear those straight from you." Ford's eyes darkened slightly, his face showing clear irritation. "Those were accidents," he said coldly, his voice lower but commanding. "Not adventure stories for public entertainment. They're the result of trying to do something, and sometimes things go wrong. There's nothing entertaining or fun about it, Jimmy. I don't recount near-death experiences for a few laughs or views. Those are personal, and they don't belong on this stage." Jimmy faltered. He'd never faced a guest so resolute in refusing to play the game. Every attempt to tap into personal anecdotes or turn the past into entertainment was shut down coldly. He decided to try another angle, a well-known Hollywood tale he thought Ford couldn't deny. All right, no plain stories. You win," Jimmy said quickly, waving his hands as if dispelling an awkward cloud, trying to regain his confidence. "How about the early days of Westerns? There's a little rumor I'd love to confirm. Word is, you once handled some issues on a film set with, well, your fists. Like a barroom brawl. Sounds like a great story for us, right? A real-life Indiana Jones action moment, no?" Jimmy grinned broadly. "Eyes expect it never happened," Ford said, his voice low but heavy, each word like a nail driven into the air. "That's nonsense gossip. I don't solve problems with fists on set. I solve them with work, with professionalism. Those kinds of stories only exist in cheap movies, Jimmy, and I'm not a character in your cheap movie." The audience began murmuring louder. A few awkward laughs rang out, then died, replaced by anxious whispers. They sensed the real tension rising, and the atmosphere had shifted entirely. Jimmy Kimmel tried to maintain his cool, but sweat beaded on his forehead. He knew he'd crossed a line, a point of no return, but the obsession with creating a memorable moment clouded his judgment. He had to do something. Now, he couldn't let this interview slip away like this. Jimmy cleared his throat, trying to dispel the tension, flashing an overly bright smile. All right, I get it, Harrison. You're not the bar brawl story guy. I get it. You're a man of serious work. I respect that. Awesome. Very professional." He spoke quickly, trying to adjust his tone to normalize things. "But here's something I think might connect our audience with the legendary characters you've played. A little tribute to your legacy, you know." As he spoke, Jimmy signaled a crew member. Immediately, a man in black stepped forward, gently placing a familiar object on the small table between Ford and Kimmel. It was an old, weathered cowboy hat, grayish-brown, looking well-worn and poorly maintained. It seemed cheap, like a prop from a souvenir shop rather than a historically valuable item. It felt like a discarded symbol now repurposed disrespectfully. Jimmy picked up the hat, waving it with a wide, encouraging grin. "Come on, Harrison. Just a quick photo, for the fans who love you. Can you put this on for a second? Just 1 second. We'll get an awesome shot, and it'll be iconic on social media. Imagine it, a picture of Harrison Ford in a cowboy hat. Perfect." Harrison Ford's eyes blazed with a smoldering fury that had been simmering for a while. He stared at the hat, then his razor-sharp gaze shifted to Jimmy. Motionless, he didn't reach for the hat or even budge. "Put it away," Ford said, his voice low and commanding, each word hammering into the air. The words were cold, definitive, unyielding. The studio fell into absolute silence, so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat. Jimmy Kimmel froze. He'd anticipated a refusal, but not a reaction this intense and authoritative. His smile stiffened, his face visibly paling. He tried to laugh it off, scratching his head, glancing at the audience for sympathy. "All right, no hats tonight, folks," he said, his voice higher than usual, attempting to sound jovial. He tossed the hat onto the table, but his smile was rigid, his eyes betraying confusion and a hint of anger. "Harrison's not one for gimmicks. He's too serious for that." But Harrison Ford wasn't placated by the attempt to smooth things over. He didn't stop. His eyes remained locked on Jimmy, unflinching, as if piercing the man's very soul. His voice echoed through the studio, laced with disdain and disappointment, not just for Jimmy but for the entire machine he represented. "I'm not here to be your puppet, Jimmy," Ford said, each word heavy like boulders crashing to the ground. "I'm not a cheap prop for you to use for a viral moment. My life, my career isn't a joke for your show," he continued, his voice growing fiercer, resonating in the eerily silent studio. "My fans, the ones who actually care about me, who respect the work I've done for over half a century, they want authenticity. They want a man who's serious about what he does. They want a meaningful story, a real conversation, not a cheap act, not a circus for you to get more views, to sell more ads. That's not what I stand for, and it's definitely not what I'll do." Jimmy Kimmel's head bowed, his face flushed. He felt as if he'd been slapped, not just a personal rebuke but a scathing condemnation of his entire entertainment philosophy and team. The audience grew louder, no longer with awkward laughs but with murmurs and meaningful glances. A few began clapping softly, then louder, as if rallying behind Ford, behind the truth. The stage lights still shone brightly, but the atmosphere had transformed. This was no longer an entertainment interview, it was an uncompromising confrontation. Harrison Ford, sitting upright, eyes resolute, had fired his shot, and Jimmy Kimmel, standing there, caught off guard by this direct counterattack, knew things had spiraled beyond his control. Jimmy took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure, though his fingers clenched tightly behind his back. He knew he had to do something, to reclaim control, even if just on the surface. "I hear you, Harrison," Jimmy said, his voice stiff and strained, attempting to restore his usual calm. "Maybe I misread what you meant by entertainment. Let's get back to your film, Lonesome Hill. You said it's about authenticity, about standing up. So what was it about the script that made you, a man known for being picky with roles, decide to take on a project like this? It must be something really special, right?" Ford remained upright, his gaze as sharp as a blade, locked on Jimmy. He showed no sign of softening or relenting. "Special?" Ford repeated, his voice low and hoarse, but clear in every word. "It's special because it's not empty spectacle. It's special because it has a message, a real message. This film is about people, like me, who don't bow to a world trying to shape them into what it wants. It's about protecting what's yours, protecting your truth, not letting the world drain you, not letting it turn you into cheap amusement. It's about honor, about resilience, about standing firm in the storm, no matter the cost." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze even sharper. "It's not about putting on a cowboy costume for a quick laugh on a talk show. It's about integrity, something I fear is increasingly rare in this industry." "Rare, Harrison?" Jimmy shot back, his tone tinged with sarcasm. "You know, we bring joy to millions every night. We bring laughter, entertainment. That's our job. And I think for the millions watching at home, that's what they expect from a show like this. Entertainment, simple. Do you think it's really that complicated?" Ford's lips twitched into an almost imperceptible smile, laced with contempt. "Entertainment is truth, Jimmy," he said, his tone resolute, unwavering. "Entertainment is connecting with an audience through sincerity, through meaningful stories, real emotions, not through cheap tricks, stage dramas, or pointless stories built to fill airtime. You think this is fun? Turning people into clowns to boost your ratings? That's not entertainment. That's exploitation. It's an insult to the audience and to the people you bring here." The studio fell silent again. The audience stopped murmuring. They were listening. Some nodded in agreement, others still confused. The studio lights blazed, but the air felt heavy, stifling. Jimmy Kimmel felt pressure from all sides, Ford's unrelenting resolve, the audience's focused stares, and the urgent shouts from the producer in his earpiece. He had to push back. "I don't think we're exploiting anyone, Harrison," Jimmy retorted, his voice sharper, losing its usual polish. "We're doing our show. We have a style, and it works. Millions watch us every night. You can't argue with that. I've been in this business long enough to know what audiences want. They want laughs. They want fun moments. Don't you think you're being a bit harsh, too rigid?" "The audience wants truth," Ford said, his voice lower but weighty. "They're tired of lies, Jimmy. They're tired of stage dramas, of stars trying to please everyone. They crave something real, something they can believe in. When you bring a man on stage, a man who's spent his life telling stories, and you try to turn him into a puppet for laughs, that's not respect, that's ignorance. And that's why what you call entertainment is becoming more and more hollow." Ford's words struck like a dagger to Jimmy's core. He felt deeply insulted. He'd built his career on this show, earning recognition as a talented host, and now one of his idols was publicly dismantling everything he stood for. "I've been in this business longer than you've been alive, Jimmy," Ford continued, giving Jimmy no chance to interject. "I've seen Hollywood change from a place of storytelling to a machine churning out content. I've seen young people like you obsessed with views and viral moments, willing to do anything for those numbers. But those numbers won't last. Truth lasts. This film of mine, it'll last, Because it's real. You with all your tricks, what are you leaving behind? Jimmy Kimmel shot up from his chair. He couldn't take it anymore. His face flushed, his smile gone, replaced by anger and desperation. Listen, Harrison, Jimmy said, his voice higher, laced with defiance. You're a legend. I don't dispute that. You can talk all you want about truth or art, but this is MY stage. This is MY show. And we have a show to do. We have rules. We have a format. And I think you're going a bit too far. Ford rose slowly from the sofa. His movements were deliberate, powerful. His tall frame, cold expression, and piercing eyes completely overshadowed Jimmy Kimmel. The studio held its breath, watching every gesture, every word. The ideological battle had escalated into a direct confrontation. Your stage, Ford repeated, his voice low but resonating through the studio, carrying deep disdain. I'm here because I chose to be, Jimmy. Not to dance for you, or to be a performing monkey for anyone. I came to talk about a film I believe in. I came to talk about what I stand for. And I won't let you or anyone else turn a serious work, a piece of my soul, into a cheap joke, just to feed your obsession with ratings and fleeting fame. Jimmy stepped back, his eyes filled with anger, confusion, and a hint of fear. The audience grew louder. Some stood, clapping harder for Ford. Boos and cheers mixed into a chaotic symphony. The director in the control room shouted urgent orders to cut to commercial, but it seemed too late. All eyes were on the two men facing off on stage, like gladiators before the final battle. You're saying I don't respect you? Jimmy snapped, his eyes flashing with defiance. What about the respect you owe us? This show, all the people who put in the work so you could come here and promote your movie. Who do you think you are, coming here and turning everything upside down like this? We're trying to do our job, give the audience a fun night, and you show up with that high and mighty attitude, wrecking everything? Harrison Ford didn't blink. He stood firm like a fortress, his towering presence and unnerving calm completely overpowering Jimmy. Without raising his voice, each word he spoke was like a bullet hitting its mark. Respect, Kimmel, Ford replied, his voice deep and resonant with authority, is built on truth, not cheap calculations. I came here with a clear purpose, to talk about a film. What about you? You want to turn me into a clown for views? That's not collaboration. That's manipulation. Jimmy scoffed, a bitter smile crossing his face. Manipulation. You call it manipulation. We call it making a show. The audience wants real moments, interesting stories from people like you. You think they want a lecture on true art? They want entertainment, Harrison. They want fun. They want sincerity, Ford emphasized, his words slicing through the air. They're tired of stage dramas, fake smiles and stars manufactured like industrial products. They crave something real. I've spent my life delivering real stories, on screen and off, and you're trying to turn everything into a lie, a relentless cycle of gimmicks. The studio fell silent. The audience no longer murmured or jeered. They were wholly absorbed in this unimaginable showdown. Some nodded in agreement with Ford, their eyes filled with admiration. Others looked confused, trying to grasp what was unfolding. The tension had reached its peak, and everyone felt the explosive energy about to erupt. Suddenly, a frantic shout came from the wings. Cut it! Cut the feed now! It was the lead producer, who had been frantically signaling the director for minutes. But it was too late. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the chaos. The red lights signaling a live broadcast still blinked, like an indifferent eye witnessing the unfolding tragedy. Jimmy Kimmel whipped around, glaring toward the director, then turned back to Ford with eyes blazing with fury. See that? Jimmy said, his voice trembling with rage. You did it. You ruined everything. My show, everything we've built. I didn't ruin anything, Jimmy, Ford replied, his tone eerily calm. I just exposed the truth. You're the one who ruined yourself when you forgot the core values of this profession. You turned this stage into a marketplace where everything can be sold, mocked, for fleeting fame. Ford's words were a final blow, shattering Jimmy's last shred of patience. He stepped back, his face pale, his eyes betraying fear. He felt cornered, with no escape. His career, his reputation, everything teetered on the brink. From the wings, Clara, Ford's longtime assistant, emerged, her face resolute and determined. She'd heard everything. She knew Ford's temperament, and she also knew Jimmy had gone too far. Clara marched straight to Ford's side, her warning glare sweeping over the hesitant security staff approaching the stage. "Don't you dare touch him," Clara snapped, aiming her words at the ashen-faced producer. "He'll leave when he's ready, not when you try to shove him out for speaking the truth." Harrison Ford raised a hand, a simple but commanding gesture silencing Clara. He needed no protection. He turned back to face Jimmy Kimmel, his eyes no longer filled with anger but with a profound disappointment, as if looking at an irredeemable wayward student. "I've said what I came to say," Ford declared, his voice echoing through the studio without a microphone. "I've done my duty. I hope at least some of you heard it." His gaze swept over the audience, lingering on faces looking up at him with awe and respect. The stage was steeped in a silent chaos. Harrison Ford's declaration was like a final verdict. He was done. Jimmy Kimmel stood there, pale, his eyes vacant, staring into the void. Shouts from the control room kept ringing out, urging a cut to the feed, but the system seemed frozen with the crew's shock. Two burly security guards in black suits finally broke the paralysis, advancing onto the stage. They'd been ordered to intervene, but as they neared Ford they hesitated. Despite their training for any situation, confronting a living legend, a man exuding such commanding presence, was another matter entirely. "Ford," one guard stammered, his voice tinged with unease, "we think maybe you should head to the lounge area for a bit. We'll escort you out." He tried to sound professional, but his eyes pleaded, as if begging Ford not to make this harder. Harrison Ford turned slowly, his gaze freezing the guard in place. A piercing, unyielding look. "You don't need to do that," he said coldly, his voice warm but heavy, like a pronounced sentence. "I'll go myself." There was no anger, just an assertion of absolute authority. The two guards stood rooted, helpless. Clara's eyes blazed with fury. She didn't spare a glance for Kimmel or the security team, turning instead to the stammering producer. "Do you see what you've done?" she demanded. "You've pushed one of the last icons of authenticity too far. Don't you dare touch him. He's not a toy for you to discard after you're done exploiting him." Harrison Ford raised his hand again, a simple but authoritative gesture silencing Clara. He had the situation under control. He turned back, giving Jimmy Kimmel one last look. His eyes no longer held rage but a deep disappointment, a look of contempt for someone who'd lost themselves in the hollow game of fame. Then Harrison Ford glanced at the audience. Some eyes were confused, but most were filled with awe and reverence. With a slight nod like a final salute to those who truly listened, he spoke. "I've said what needed saying. My work here is done." His voice reverberated through the studio, needing no microphone, as if his very spirit filled the space. Without a goodbye, without a lingering glance, he turned. Each step was slow, deliberate, carrying the aura of a man who could not be bent. His towering figure gradually disappeared into the wings, like an ancient statue retreating from a noisy, hollow modern world. He wasn't just leaving a studio, he was leaving a regime he no longer wished to be part of. Jimmy Kimmel stood alone on the brightly lit stage, but the lights now seemed to expose his raw vulnerability. His forced smile was gone, replaced by a pale face and vacant, stunned eyes. He tried to say something to fill the terrifying silence. "Well, wow, that was quite a moment, wasn't it?" Jimmy stammered, his voice trembling, faltering. "Yeah, that's Harrison Ford for you. Very unique. Always knows how to make an impression, right?" He tried to laugh, but the sound was shrill and distorted, lost in the silence. The band attempted to play to salvage the moment, but their feeble notes only highlighted the emotional chaos engulfing the room. The interview was over, but its echoes would linger forever. As soon as Harrison Ford vanished into the wings, like an ancient statue stepping out of the past, the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio plunged into unprecedented chaos. The band's music, struggling to play, only underscored the awkwardness and emptiness. Jimmy stood there, eyes vacant, realizing he'd been both witness and victim to a fateful moment that would go down in television history. The control room was a hornet's nest. The director shouted, the producer paled, and camera operators argued through headsets. Despite efforts to cut the feed, the video of the fiery clash between two icons had already spread. A young assistant, face ashen, rushed to the producer, stammering, It's all online. We couldn't cut it. Millions of views, skyrocketing. Like a digital storm, short clips of the argument spread at lightning speed across platforms. From Twitter to YouTube, Instagram to TikTok, hashtags like Harrison Ford Truth, Kimmel Clash, Real Hollywood, and No More Puppets exploded, trending globally within minutes. Ford's searing words, I'm not here to be a puppet, entertainment is truth, respect is earned, not bought with lights and applause, were clipped, set to music, turned into memes and reaction videos, and shared relentlessly. The media's reaction split into two stark camps. Tabloids and entertainment sites pounced on the drama. Sensational headlines flooded the web. Harrison Ford loses it on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Hollywood titans clash, who's right, who's wrong. Kimmel humiliated as Ford schools him on stage. They zeroed in on the tensest moments, angry expressions and chaos, spinning it into juicy entertainment fodder for clicks and comments. Their goal was noise, regardless of truth. Mainstream media and film critics, however, took a deeper approach. Major newspapers, prestigious magazines, and renowned critics analyzed the event through a cultural and artistic lens. They lauded Harrison Ford's courage, hailing him as a hero daring to speak raw truth in an industry increasingly dominated by shallow values. A Hollywood Reporter article stated, "This wasn't just a spat, it was a manifesto." Harrison Ford, one of the last legends of a true Hollywood, challenged the shallowness of modern entertainment TV. He spoke for millions tired of stage dramas and stars pandering for laughs. Variety opined, Ford's exit from the stage wasn't a defeated retreat, but a powerful stride. He proved an icon doesn't need to perform tricks to hold their place. Integrity is the true crown. Hollywood insiders quickly weighed in. Veteran directors, actors, and producers publicly backed Ford. An Oscar-winning female director posted, "It's time someone spoke the truth. We're not puppets. Art isn't a circus. Thank you, Harrison Ford, for standing up." Another prominent actor, a talk show regular, tweeted simply, "I feel you, Harrison. You're not alone." This wave of support revealed the real pressure to perform on talk shows, and Ford became a hero voicing a generation of artists. The public's reaction was the most striking. Ford's global fan base erupted with pride. They saw him not just as a talented actor, but as an emblem of steadfastness, a man living by his principles. Posts and comments overflowed with admiration. "This is why I love Harrison Ford. He's so badass, calling out that fakeness. That's a real man, not a Hollywood product." Those weary of showbiz's glitz and fakery connected deeply with Ford's message. They saw the event as a small victory for authenticity against an entertainment machine obsessed with views and money. They shared personal stories of frustration with reality TV, hollow clickbait content, and found solace in Ford's words. Finally, someone said it, echoed across forums. Still, a few dissenting voices emerged. Some called Ford grumpy, unprofessional, or overreacting. "He should know where he is," one critic commented. "It's a talk show, not a philosophy lecture. He's paid to entertain." But these voices were quickly drowned out by the overwhelming support for Ford, signaling a shift in public perception of entertainment's true value. For Jimmy Kimmel and his show, the fallout was a massive blow. That night's ratings soared to an all-time high, but it was a bitter victory. The show's credibility took a severe hit. Jimmy and the producers' phones rang non-stop with reprimands from executives, emergency meetings about reputation damage. Jimmy Kimmel faced the biggest PR crisis of his career. In the days that followed, Jimmy lived under crushing pressure. He stared at headlines, viral videos, and realized he'd underestimated his opponent. He'd been wrong to treat Ford as just another guest to exploit. The lesson wasn't just about losing control on live TV, but about a clash of worldviews. His obsession with viral moments had blinded him to the authenticity Ford embodied. It was a costly lesson, and Jimmy knew it would haunt him for a long time. The moment Harrison Ford walked off the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage wasn't just the end of a disastrous interview, it was the start of a seismic ripple, an event reshaping perceptions of entertainment and art. His action, seemingly a spontaneous outburst, became a symbol of the struggle between true value and shallow spectacle in the entertainment industry. The incident swiftly entered media studies curricula, a case study on the collision of art and commerce, authenticity and the digital era's clickbait demands. Students dissected every line, every glance to understand the pressures artists face and the evolving expectations of audiences. This showdown wasn't just on TV, it played out in the minds of viewers, forcing them to rethink what entertainment truly means. Ironically, the scandal brought unexpected benefits to Ford's film Lonesome Hill. Previously known mainly to critics, it sparked public curiosity after the incident. People flocked to theaters not just for a great film, but to uncover what drove a legend like Ford to risk his reputation to defend it. They wanted to see the profound message he'd fought to share, a message strong enough to defy Hollywood's rules. Lonesome Hill became a box office phenomenon and earned critical acclaim, proving authenticity could still triumph over noise. Harrison Ford was celebrated not only for his storied career, his iconic roles etched in legend, but for his unwavering commitment to his principles. He became an emblem of integrity, a rare figure in a treacherous, deceitful entertainment world. He wasn't just a talented actor, he was a philosopher, a guardian of truth, a powerful voice against the erosion of values. To the public, he proved a true star doesn't need to perform tricks to maintain their status. Principle and truth are the eternal spotlight. The clash with Jimmy Kimmel wasn't the end of a career, but the reinforcement of a legacy. It was a stark reminder that in showbiz's turbulent world, where value is often measured by clicks and ratings, there are still those who stand for what they believe. Harrison Ford didn't just leave the stage. He drew a clear line, a wordless manifesto to Hollywood and audiences about what truly matters: sincerity, integrity, and the true meaning of art. He voiced the frustrations of millions tired of fakery, and that is the enduring legacy he left behind. It will continue to resonate, reminding us that sometimes the greatest moments come when truth dares to speak, no matter the cost. In the story of Harrison Ford and Jimmy Kimmel, we witnessed a confrontation not just on television, but a clash of two philosophies of life. That encounter, with Ford bluntly refusing to be a clown or turned into a cheap prop with a cowboy hat, wasn't merely a Hollywood event. It reflected a deeper truth in modern American life, where the line between authenticity and artifice grows ever blurrier. This battle applies to many facets of American life today. In a society obsessed with image likes and viral moments on social media, we often find ourselves in Jimmy Kimmel's role, trying to craft a polished, sellable version of ourselves for attention. Yet as Harrison Ford boldly declared, entertainment is truth. Entertainment is connecting with an audience through sincerity, not cheap tricks. His words resonate as a reminder that true value comes from integrity and authenticity. In American workplaces or social relationships, the pressure to play a role or please others can be immense. We may feel compelled to feign interest in things we don't care about or build an image that doesn't reflect our true selves. But Ford showed the power of saying no to what doesn't align with one's core values. His unapologetic critique of Jimmy Kimmel's obsession with views and viral moments reminds us that chasing shallow metrics can erode credibility and inner worth. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on profound stories and meaningful confrontations, where truth is always honored. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring what's real in this ever-changing world.